Welcome to the Equity Conscious Leader, a new generation equity podcast and YouTube channel where we chat with leaders about tangible system change and strategies to advance and sustain equity work in their organizations. Our conversations dive deep into the 6 dimensions of equity conscious leadership. So how do you lead with transformational system change for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? Let's find out on this episode of the Equity Conscious Leader with your host and educational equity leader, Dr. Jag Lathan.
Lastly, I want to go into barriers. You named a few things, and one of which was you didn't feel safe in one group to say what needed to be said, what you observed, right? So you use the community agreements as a way to do that. What were the barriers? And then lastly, after that, we'll talk about how do people overcome those barriers. So I can give examples if you want, or you can just jump in.
So, I mean, one of my biggest critique, so I have a few critiques that I can get on a soapbox about with teaming that bother me all the time. The first one is when a new member arrives. When there's a shift in the team, I don't care where you are on Tuckman's team formation, you go back to storming. And people don't understand that concept. And so, like, no, you just welcomed a new team member. You've now changed the dynamic completely. So now you have to go back to storming, and they don't want to. So they see it as like, no, we're actually already moving on the groove. This person's going to come in. And so that doesn't provide the psychological safety for the new member, but there's also not like an understanding that changes your dynamic. And that bothers me all of the time. Like, did anyone notice we have a new member here? Like, it's like they might not even agree with the norms. Like, they're just a new employee saying yes right now, but we're not actually accepting their ideas. So that's one of the biggest pet peeves that I have, Jag. And the other one is when it's performative. So if you're bringing a group together just because you know that's good work, but you don't actually take the ideas that are being told, or the critique, I'm going to say the critiques, or even the warnings of like, hi, I've seen this fail. Here's what you need to, be careful of. Then I don't like the performative space. And there was one group actually just maybe a year ago, with high school principals. And they were about to come together to talk about student-centered master schedules. Now, Jag, I did that work as area soup like 6 years ago with them, right? I'm like, we're still having this conversation. So I actually I went to the professional learning series. I had them sit in a circle, and I just said, so I'm concerned that we're still talking about this. So what is it about this topic that is really scary to do? I said, because what I fear, and I'm going to name my fear again, is that I'm going to come here, present to you about student schedules. You're going to nod your head, take notes, get in your car, and do whatever the hell you want anyway. And I said, so for the next 4 hours, we're going to be sitting here lying to each other. And I don't know about you, but I have things to do. So if we're just going to lie to each other for 4 hours, I don't want to be here. And the level of like head nods in that space when I said that. So, yeah, like, why do you want to do this? And we do this all of the time for niceties, right? And so we're being nice, we're being polite. I'm going to say we don't have the psychological safety to go, hey, yeah, that's really scary to do. And I'm going to get attacked when I get back to my school site. So I don't want to do that. Like, that level of problem solving, we don't actually engage in. So again, professional learning that's rooted in ignorance, right? If you only knew how to do a student-centered master schedule. And what these people said was, we know this. It's scary. I ain't doing it because you're not going to have my back. That was ultimately the thing that they said. They're like, if we go back and do it and we get attacked by those folks that don't believe in this, you're not going to have our back, and then we're going to die and we're going to be out of a job. That's pretty
Dr.
much.
Bagula, that is the real work. That is the real equity work there. It's not the actual, because the information is out there. Research is out there about master schedules. Research is out there around so many things in education. But to me, the true boldness is when we actually go back and do the work and they named it for you once you were able to put it out there and say, no, we're going to stop right now because we did this 6 years ago. When you were there the 6 years prior, they had actually engaged in that work, right? And so with the real deal, that when they name that for you, that's where the work comes in. How then do you as a team, how do we work together to create, whatever we need to create so that you can actually go back to your schools and do the work, right?
Yes.
And how then does the district, because I always think about leadership, this could be a nonprofit organization, it could be a district, it could be a hospital, whatever it is. When you begin to implement something new, how does the organization and the people who are in formal positions of leadership actually hold that team not only accountable but support them, move barriers out of their way, change policies, do whatever they need to do so they can actually go back and change the system the way it needs to happen. That is the work of a team, but then it is the responsibility of the organization to actually support those people. Thank you for saying
Yes.
that, because that is a whole,
Yes.
literally, that is the whole point of what we're talking about.
I have a group right now. I'm trying to teach my executives to run groups, collective wisdom groups around really big things. And so we have a meaningful graduation one, a hire to retire about how we create an equitable pathway for all employees, an asset-based data system, and an equity one. Okay, so we have 4. And I'm training folks to have those very real conversations. And what I love about the meaningful graduation one is that that person now has the parent chair for special education, parents from the Muslim community, 10th graders. Like she really brought a collective group, and she's really understanding this concept of we're doing something radically different. So if we try something on, then we have to create a healthy feedback loop, and it's okay to fail on some ideas as long as we're monitoring and evaluating them moving forward. And I love the discourse and dialogue that's happening there, where students have actually said to us like, yeah, that idea you have, that's lame, we're not going to respond to it. Like that's not it. Like that's something that you think it's it, but it isn't. It's not going to reach us. And what's living with me right now too with middle school is I had a group of middle schoolers. Okay, so I had parents say this school is very unsafe. We want metal detectors and dogs to come in. Like they wanted to make it into a prison, really. But I know that's rooted in concern for their kids. Okay, the principals are saying we do have safety measures, we do have checks, we don't need anyway. So I brought kids in to talk about safety, and the students listened to both groups, and I wanted them to listen to both adults in their life. And then the student goes, yeah, you both don't listen to us. The teachers aren't listening and the parents aren't listening. We don't want any of that. And as a matter of fact, none of what you're thinking is happening is actually happening. And it was a beautiful conversation. But what ended up happening after that, Dr. Jag, is the adults were so invested in their narrative that they completely ignored what the students just said. And so I had to come back and say, so you just did what the students said you do. So I know the students are telling the truth. You're continuing to ignore the voice that's actually saying this is actually what we need at school in order to feel safe, not metal detectors and backpack checks. So anyway, just kind of storytelling there, but
And how the team actually receives information and uses the information to make systemic change, I think is really important. But if you're not hearing the folks that you're trying to help build, like work with to make systemic change, and you're actually not working with them, you're trying to do the work for them, and that is not effective. So, and the healthy feedback loops are so important with teams. So, for the team, as they're working, they're designing, they're implementing with fidelity, is being able to go back to the organization, to the leaders, and come back as a team to talk about regularly, how is this going? Are the changes we are trying to make actually leading to the change that we want it to make? And how do we know, right? So,
I have a very real barrier right now happening with that. So a very real barrier that's happening that I have to change, that I'm working on changing is, but my to-do list, my project or my concept is so wrapped up around my identity and my worth that if my idea fails, then it's going to mean that I fail and I am a failure. And I'm trying to break that away. Like an idea failing doesn't mean you're a failure. An idea failing doesn't isn't wrapped up with your identity or your worth. And you don't have to be so fearful of that. So that's literally currently what I'm trying to intervene on, because that's a toxic work environment culture. And so really thinking about, no, it's our collective work. And if we truly have a good and healthy feedback loop, we know we're trying something new, we're trying it on, but it's not my identity or my worth in this organization. And that's been really hard to break.
worked with a group recently and equity and transformational work. And one of the things they said is, this is great. and it was a nonprofit, but this person also worked in the business sector. And she said, but can I take this to the business sector? Because in business, it is like A, B, and C, we have to get it done. There is no room for mistakes, right? And so it is. I think it's just about the culture and where in which those trials happen. That's important, right? Sometimes it's on the back end trying things before you bring it to the larger group, or sometimes you prototype. A lot of times you should prototype and then take it to the larger group. And that is really about just trying things on. And then as it works, you keep building. And the things that don't work, come back as a team and have those conversations, because that's the only way we're really going to transform this system and to change it.
Well, there was someone that said something to me about this, because they said something to both the superintendent and myself. They said, oh, you're laying the foundation. And I said, I'm not laying the foundation. I'm actually doing a geological study on the soil underneath this foundation. And I am now 6 feet deep when I thought I was only 3. I said, so and I'm just, the amount of work that's necessary to take a look at transformative systems for students is huge. And like I said, Dr. Jag, I'm not here to do what's been done before, which is going to take a different level of intentionality and work and even consciousness. But I'm actually really excited to try it on with a new team.
Dr. Bagula, I so appreciate you engaging in this conversation today. I gained a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure our listeners will too. And I look forward to our continued partnership together and just learning about all the amazing work that you're doing in your current district in San Diego Unified School District. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fabiola Bagula, for being our guest today on the Equity Conscious Leader and for sharing your thoughts, experiences, and expertise on how to lead true system change through a lens of equity. The Equity Conscious Leader is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We want to thank you for listening to the Equity Conscious Leader, our way of deepening and expanding this very important work of transforming systems into liberated places that benefit all. Until next time, building equity-focused systems together.